So when I was a sophomore in high school, I had this teacher who would only let the students in her class use the restroom one time per semester. Well, one day I raised my hand and I was like, "Excuse me," I don't remember her name, "can I please use the restroom?" And she was like, "No, you can't, because you've already used the restroom in my class this semester." Well, excuse me, you can't dictate my bladder. So I'm like all frustrated, and I started secretly texting my mom because I wasn't allowed to use my phone in class. And I was like, "Mom, I'm sitting in class right now. My teacher won't let me use the restroom." And she was like, "I'll take care of it for you." And I was like, "Okay." So like 5 minutes goes by, and all of a sudden my teacher's phone starts ringing, and she walks up to it and answers it, and she's like, "Hello?" "Yeah." "Okay, thank you." And then she walks up to me like so angry, and she like slams the pass on my desk, and she was like, "Since you have to go that bad." And I was like, "Yeah, I really do, thanks." And I got up and left. I didn't even have to go to the bathroom. It was just the principle of it. I just roamed the halls.
Story time on how my mom tried to convince me to have a threesome with her. So I had just graduated high school, and my mom was single for a while. Then she started dating this guy, which me and my brother really liked, but he was a few years younger than my mom. And honestly, we were happy for her. She was very depressed and miserable with my dad, so we were okay with it because she was finally happy. So like I said, I had just graduated high school, and I always said I never wanted to go to college, so I started working retail. One day while I was at work, my mom called me and said, "Hey, let's go out shopping." And who am I to say no? So after I got out of work, I met my mom, and we went lingerie shopping. That's what she specifically wanted to get. So we were at the store, and the first thing she said was, "Let's get matching sets," which was weird coming from my mom. But I said, "Fine, come back for part 2. Story time on how my mom tried to convince me to have a threesome with her. Part 2. So like I said, it was really awkward coming from my mom because I've always been close with my mom, but never that close. And like I said, she was miserable with my dad, so I tried to do everything to make her happy. And I said yes. So we got our matching sets and we went home. When we got home, her boyfriend was there. Awkward, but whatever. I said hi to him and went straight to my room. My mom called me downstairs 10 minutes after, told me she wanted to propose me something. But first she said, "So you know there was a reason why I wanted to buy matching sets with you?" And I said, "No." "And let's call her boyfriend Brian." She said, "Well, Brian gave me a really good idea, and I wasn't sure at the time, but I want to try new things." And then she said these words, "Let's have a threesome." I was speechless. And she said, "I know it sounds crazy now. Come back for part 3. Story time on how my mom tried to convince me to have a threesome with her. So she said, "I know it sounds crazy now, but hear me out." And then Brian jumped in and said, "It's not an actual threesome. What we really want is for you to watch us, but we want you to wear your mom's same lingerie." And I freaked out and literally rashed my mom and told her that for her, I would do anything. But that is so inappropriate, so disgusting, and most important of all, I said, "I'm your daughter." And only after all of that, she realized what she tried to propose me was wrong. And she kicked Brian out and tried to tell me how she was so sorry that she's embarrassed for herself. And guys, I called my dad, moved in with my dad. I have some communication with my mom, but after that day, nothing will ever be the same.
So there's this customer that comes into my store probably like once or twice a week. He works with a program called Instacart. He basically buys people's groceries for them so they don't have to leave the house, and he delivers them to them. So we're having a conversation at my register one day, and he made a gross sexual comment. It gave me very much pedophile vibes, and I was like, relax. And he was like, "Oh, no, like, I'm just joking. I joke with all the girls here like that." I don't know if it's because I watch too much TV, but that shit didn't sound right. My spidey senses tingling off the charts. I was like, this dude is a fucking weirdo. If you're a rewards member at my store, your name comes up on my computer screen when you type in your phone number. So being that the sex offender database is public information, I went out on a limb here, and what naturally occurred to me in my big old badonga was to look up his name. And what happened when I looked up his name? Sex offender. Yeah. How's he an Instacart worker?
Story time of how my parents forced me to marry a 40-year-old man when I was 14, but most people from my country, it is called arranged marriage, and it happened to a lot of girls. My family was poor, but the guy I was marrying had a lot of money and promised to take care of me and my family. He also had a 6-year-old son, but he didn't like me. I had met him once before when my mother introduced him to us. She allowed me to stay with him alone. He was very touchy. He told me I was very beautiful and would spoil me because pretty girls like me deserve pretty things. After he left, I told my parents that I was scared to marry him and that I'll do more housework and I'll take care of my other little sisters. My father yelled at me and told me no. So the next week, I went throughout the whole wedding crying. My mom told me to stop because I was messing up my makeup. After we had got married, a couple months later, he grew very abusive. Part 2 will be up next. This is part 2 of how my parents forced me to marry a 40-year-old man and I was 14. So we got married and a couple months into the relationship, he became abusive. Whenever my food tasted nasty or something wasn't clean right, he called me a lazy wife and told me I was no good and he should have married someone else. His 6-year-old son had no respect for me. The little boy scratched me, would yell at me, throw stuff at me, and my husband wouldn't do anything about it. I would tell him that I didn't like how his son was treating me, and he stood up and tells me to stay in my place and tells me I'm just a bad mother. I'd cried every night, wishing I could go back home to my mother and father. 2 years later, when I turned 16, I found out I was pregnant. He was so happy about it, and for once, he treated me so sweet. He would cook for me, clean, and told his son to be nice because his little brother was in there. When we found out the baby was a girl, he got mad and walked out on me. Part 3 will be up next. This is part 3 of how my parents forced me to marry a 40-year-old man and I was 14. So my husband was excited that I was pregnant, but when he found out I was having a baby girl, he got very upset and walked out of the room. When we got home, he started treating me nasty again. He then started putting his hands on me. He was just very angry at me and never wanted to see his daughter. It took him 3 weeks before picking her up. But even then, he wanted nothing to do with her. As years went on, I became quiet and I wouldn't speak to him. I would just make sure our home was clean and the children were taken care of. He would just get upset with me that I wouldn't speak to him and accuse me of cheating. He claimed that I was sleeping with other men and that our daughter is probably not even his child. I never understood why because I was always home because he didn't allow me to go out. But I soon realized he only accused me of cheating because he was cheating the entire time. Part 4 is coming up soon. This is part 4 of how my parents forced me to marry a 40-year-old man and I was 14. My husband would always accuse me of cheating, but I found out he only accused me because he was cheating on me the entire time. Ended up finding out because his son told me. And like I said earlier, his son never liked me in the first place. So when I had made him upset, he randomly said, "That's why my dad has a new woman." I was off about it, so I went to ask my husband about it, and he admitted to it. He was very blunt about it, and he told me it was because the lady tempted him. I believed him at the time, but as time grew on, I started to become very insecure. I'd do whatever he want, but it was never good enough because he still kept stepping out of our marriage. On my 19th birthday is when I realized I had to figure out a way for me and my daughter to leave him. He didn't even say happy birthday to me, and that was my husband. I had no money, I didn't own anything, but I took a chance, so I packed whatever I could, and I planned for me and my daughter to run away while he went to work. This is part 5 of how my parents forced me to marry a 40-year-old man, and I was 14. So like I said before, I made a plan for me and my daughter to run away while he went to work. When he left, I packed up food, clothes, and took money that we saved up just in case something happened. I woke my daughter up out of her sleep and I told her we need to go. I woke her son up and I told him we were going to the store and that we would be right back. He went right back to sleep and I gathered our things and took me and my daughter to the train station. She asked where we were going and I told her we were going to see our other family. When we got on the train, my daughter went to sleep and I cried because of all the pain I was put through with my husband. I left and I wasn't able to say goodbye to my mother, father, or any of my younger sisters. I didn't want any of them to know because I knew they were going to try to send me back. And leaving was the best decision that I made of my life. It's now been 23 years and I found my now husband and we're living a better life. And I bless God for allowing me to make.
This story time is a warning to please be cautious if you ever speak to someone over the internet. So when I was 14 and still in high school, my local area was going through a weird stage where someone was trying to contact a lot of the 14-year-olds and see if they wanted to join an escort agency. This was done over Facebook, and of course, most of the girls just ignored these messages. However, my friends and I thought it'd be funny if we ended up messaging this person back. Obviously, bad idea. We weren't serious about meeting up with this person, we really just thought it was a big joke. However, once I was by myself, I continued to message this person. They kept commenting on how beautiful I was and said that I was like a sister to them. I was obviously very impressionable at 14 years old and was wanting all the attention I could get, so I continued to message the person on the other side of the phone for the next couple of weeks, not realizing that I was being groomed. After the next couple of weeks, I was sitting in class and I got an extremely panicked message from my mom saying that I need to come home immediately and that she needs my phone. I guess a family friend of ours had told her about the messages and had also seen a lot of the escort advertisements. So my mom read through the messages, quickly called the police, and the conclusion was to block the account and be more careful next time. I thought it was case closed, but I was wrong. Stay tuned for part 2 and follow me on Instagram. Storytime part 2 on how I was groomed over the internet at the age of 14. So after the police took several statements from my mom and I was told to block the account and just be more cautious, I thought everything was done. But 3 years later, I was sitting with my friends when I got a phone call. The police had contacted me saying that my statement had come up again in another case. This is when they let me know that it wasn't an escort agency at all. It was a man who was sitting by his computer and messaging young girls to come meet him. He had been doing this to hundreds of girls for the past 15 years. The next couple years of my life were filled with police interviews and statements, waiting for actions for me and his other victims. The guy had a trial but pleaded not guilty, which meant that we all had to go to court. The court date was set, but obviously the coronavirus became a huge issue, and it was set to be moved to another date, which I was very thankful about because I was 7 months pregnant with my daughter, and just overall fearful of what would happen. So this guy had a warrant out for his arrest and he didn't show up for his plea bargain, so he was put out as a missing person, which we were all notified of, but that scared me to death. However, we ended up getting a phone call recently saying that they found the man and he had taken his own life. And that's how everything ended. I hope everyone stays safe, and if you have a story you'd like to share, follow me on Instagram and DM me.